Help us focus further on the technicals and for a deep dive into some of the existing trends to keep an eye on into the beginning of the year. Jerry Parker joins us, CEO of Chesapeake Capital. Jerry, welcome. Happy New Year. Good to have you with us. We just looked at the big move up in Bit. Do you trade it?
Oh, yeah. Bitcoin, of course, and Ethereum, and a few of the crypto stocks as well.
Okay, so talk to us then a little bit about the run-up we've seen, the lead-up into the enthusiasm associated with these products. Not only that's risk-on tone we've been seeing in stocks, which we can get into in just a second, but this seems to be tied to the expectations of the ETF approval and expectations that we'll hear from the SEC early this year.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's been rallying, ever since that news sort of hit the market. And so we've been long for a while, a month or so. And every day you sort of face that, what's the news going to be like today, positive or negative? So yesterday must have been very positive. But then before I went to bed last night, I read an article that BlackRock was delaying purchasing a lot of cash Bitcoin. So we're just rocking and rolling here with this one market that no one really understands and no one knows what to do, which fits perfectly with a technical trend following system.
Okay, I like that. This is a wild horse, right? And you're holding on for the ride here. Talk to us about how, are you concerned here, Jerry, that we're setting up your classic buy rumor, sell fact type scenario?
Probably. Yeah. I mean, I think anytime you see this big volatility, even when it's sort of positive like yesterday, it's not sort of sustainable. And it just means, like you said earlier, that, okay, the next day may be sort of a material move in the opposite direction. But I think eventually, the whole reason it probably is going to have, the potential for a good trend is things will settle down and people from all around will start buying the Bitcoin ETF and the cash Bitcoin and the ETF. And so it'll just become something to invest in over time, and it probably will see some sustained trend. Maybe not this one, but over time it'll have its fair share of sustained trends.
I like that, Jerry, because what I've been hearing really from a lot of our guests is those that are in for the long haul, at least, right? Not necessarily trying to day trade this product, but they're talking about how, again, yeah, we could see a big run up into this SEC announcement, possibly some buy rumor, sell fact in reaction to, but ultimately we're really talking about the longer term gains that these products are going to see with that wider adoption ultimately. Talk to us a little bit about the indices also participating in risk on tone prevalent there into the end of the year to new all-time highs. Were you able to catch any of the move that we saw off the October lows?
Yes, I mean, I think when you look deep into the stock market and at all the stocks, for instance, and not just the indices, you see quite a few stocks in uptrends and quite a few, not as many now, in downtrends. So I don't like to play the indices as much as I do the individual names. And we have a fair amount of longs and fair amount of sustained upward trends that have been going on for quite a while, irrespective of what the S&P looked like. The S&P chart looks different from most of the stocks that are in uptrends, and obviously a lot different than the ones that are in downtrends.
Jerry, in many ways, a trend follower's dream, a perfect environment into the end of the year, right? As in many instances, whether it was the futures or the products related to some of the underlyings, ultimately a rising boat seemed to lift all tides.
Yes, it's all good news. And now we're sort of suffering yesterday because everything was down. So, when you're following the trends on the stocks, you are going to get hit every now and then by everything's down or everything's up. And then after a while, everything sort of starts and does its own thing again. And you have these chart patterns and trends that look much different than the index or other stocks in particular.
Jerry, last couple times you were on the show, I've either been sick or on vacation, I think it was. You were with Tom White, and I watched the interviews, but we were going back further, trying to find a clip that you said, I'm reminded of a time we were talking about gold, kind of chopping around 1900, 2000. We were talking about, are we going to get these new all-time highs? And I remember you said to me something along the lines of, and I'm just kind of paraphrasing, but something along the lines of sometimes in a well-defined trend like this to the upside, you have to patiently wait for some of the weaker longs to get out, right? Wait for a pullback, shake out those weaker longs before you get that real big move to the upside. I'm wondering, with the move to 2152 that we saw recently in gold, new all-time highs, were you a bit disappointed in terms of the lack of follow-through?
Well, not as it relates to a disappointment in what's going to happen in gold in the future. I'm disappointed that I'm not making money quicker
Yeah.
in gold in a long gold position, but it doesn't have much impact on what eventually is going to occur. These sort of rallies and sell-offs, I think like your previous guest was talking about, this is how markets work.
Hmm.
And everyone thinks, well, it's not a healthy trend or it's not a strong
Hmm.
trend. This is
In many ways,
it's
it
too
may
much
feed into it
analysis.
more, so it seems like.
Of course, yeah,
Yeah.
because you kind of want to see who's strong, see who can hang in there with a little bit of volatility and sell-offs, and who you got to be strong to hang on to these trends and not look to get out and think you can get some information from these daily fluctuations. There's no information to be gained. It's the long-term trends that matter.
I like that a lot, Jerry, and it's given me a lot of food for thought in many ways. It was a kind of an angle of things I hadn't thought about prior to asking that question, so I'm glad I did. In many ways, what makes me think about is maybe it's the new shorts that came in off those highs that are going to be the ones that propel us up into the new or start that next move to the upside as they're covering if they don't get that follow through to the downside that they'd be looking for, which oftentimes you see if you're trading counter trend, right? You have to be real quick. The market doesn't necessarily see follow through or continuation in the direction of a counter trend trade to the extent that it sees in the direction of a trend following type trade.
That's right. I mean, it's just the human nature to try to pick those tops and bottoms,
Yeah.
and it works a lot of the times. But most of the time, it's just going to be a small gain.
Yeah.
And hanging in there with the trend, most of the time, a lot of the times, it's going to be the big gains, and you're not going to. It's not going. But it's not going to happen that often. So, what do you want? More money or more satisfaction of being right? I'd like to have more money. So that's why I hang in there with the long-term trends.
Absolutely, and in that sense, you let the market do the work for you, right? Rather than kind of trying to pick up nickels in front of a steamroller, as I like to put it. Watch your fingers in many ways, right? Jerry, lastly, a quick thought. Go ahead. And any other markets, any other trends you're dialed in on as we head into the year that we haven't talked about?
I think that the dollar, it's interesting that rates in the U.S. are staying higher than in Europe, and now we're sort of seeing that flowing into dollar buying. So I think what's happening in rates and what's happening in the dollar are sort of connected, and it looks like we may get a whipsaw here and see a higher dollar and even higher rates. Hard to say, but maybe just too much bullishness on the bond market and too much bearishness on the dollar.
Well, I hope we do, because oftentimes the ripple effect is widespread. Jerry, really appreciate you joining us here. A solid look at markets this Wednesday morning with the CEO of Chesapeake Capital. That's Jerry Parker.